Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading text number 10. Yogi yunjita satatam atmanam rahasi sthita ekaki yata chittatma nirashira aparigraha. Yogi yunjita satatam atmanam rahasi sthita ekaki yata chittatma nirashira parigraha. Yogi yunjita satatam atmanam rahasi sthita ekaki yata chittatma nirashira parigraha. Yogi yunjita satatam atmanam rahasi sthita ekaki yata chittatma nirashira parigraha. Yogi yunjita satatam atmanam rahasi sthita ekaki yata chittatma nirashira aparigraha. Yogi yunjita satatam atmanam rahasi sthita ekaki yata chittatma nirashira aparigraha. Word to word meanings. Yogi, a transcendentalist. Yunjita, must concentrate in Krishna consciousness. Satatam, constantly. Atmanam, himself, by body, mind and self. Rahasi, in a secluded place. Sthita, being, situated. Ekaki, alone. Yata chittatma, always careful in mind. Nirashi, without being attracted by anything else. Aparigraha, free from the feeling of possessiveness. Translation. A transcendentalist should always engage his body, mind and self in relationship with the Supreme. He should live alone in a secluded place and should always carefully control his mind. He should be free from desires and feelings of possessiveness. Purport. Krishna is realized in different degrees as Brahman, Paramatma and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna consciousness means concisely to be always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. But those who are attached to the impersonal Brahman or the localized supersoul are also partially Krishna conscious, because the impersonal Brahman is the spiritual sky of Krishna, and the supersoul is the all-pervading partial expansion of Krishna. Thus, the impersonalist and the meditator are also indirectly Krishna conscious. A directly Krishna conscious person is the topmost transcendentalist, because such a devotee knows what is meant by Brahman and Paramatma. His knowledge of the absolute truth is perfect, whereas the impersonalist and the meditative yogi are imperfectly Krishna conscious. Nevertheless, all of these are instructed herewith to be constantly engaged in the particular pursuit, so that they may come to the highest perfection sooner or later. The first business of a transcendentalist is to keep the mind always on Krishna. One should always think of Krishna and not forget him even for a moment. Concentration of the mind on the Supreme is called samadhi or trance. In order to concentrate the mind, one should always remain in seclusion and avoid disturbance by external objects. He should be very careful to accept favorable and reject unfavorable conditions that affect his realization. And in perfect determination, he should not hanker after unnecessary material things that entangle him by feeling of possessiveness. All these perfections are all these perfections and precautions are perfectly executed when one is directly in Krishna consciousness. Because direct Krishna consciousness means self-negation, whereas there is very little chance for material possessiveness. Srila Rup Goswami characterizes Krishna consciousness in this way. Anasaktasya vishayan yathartham upayanja is not as complete in his renunciation. Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu 1.2.255 to 256. A Krishna conscious person well knows that everything belongs to Krishna and thus he is always free from feeling of personal possession. As such, he has no hankering for anything on his own personal account. He knows how to accept things in favor of Krishna consciousness and how to reject things unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. He is always aloof from material things because he is always transcendental and he is always alone, having nothing to do with the persons not in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a person in Krishna consciousness is a perfect yogi. Text 9. A person is considered still further advanced when he regards honest well-wishers, affectionate benefactors, the neutral mediators, the envious friends and enemies, the pious and the sinners, all with an equal mind. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Deham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanshcha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saygana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Saygana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitanscha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaurtvashe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishmanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhube Evacha Patidanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Nama Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Please repeat the translation after me. A transcendentalist should always engage his body, mind and self in relationship with the Supreme. He should live alone in a secluded place and should always carefully control his mind. He should be free from desires and feelings of possessiveness. These two verses convey a very important message to us. In the 10th verse, Prabhupada is explaining that a transcendentalist should always engage his body, mind and self in relationship with the Supreme. And emphasis is given on engaging. What we have to engage? The body, the mind, and the self, means the soul, has to be engaged. In whose service? In Krishna's service. We are always engaging body, mind, and self in some service. To whomever we consider our relationship, we engage in his service. If by any chance we consider any relationship with Krishna, then we would engage these three things in his service in that extent. Like before coming to Krishna consciousness, we were engaging all these things completely in the service of material energy. But after coming to Krishna consciousness, we are engaging these three things to some extent in service of Krishna. Now, gradually, as we are progressing with time, our level of engagement in Krishna's service is increasing. How much it is increasing? To the level of extent we are getting convinced. And whomever we know, whomever we feel a relationship, we will engage in his service. Supposedly, if there is some stranger in your place, if there is a stranger in your place, you will not engage yourself in his service. He will come and you will come, you will see, and you will just pass away. But if you know that person is someone, then you will engage. If you know about his glories, if you know how great that person is, then your level of engagement would be more, and it is going to become more serious and more careful. There is a old man walking on the street, and he knocks at your door, enters at your house, and you see that, who is this person? But when you come to know that that person is the Prime Minister of India, then you will try to serve him with all your best capacity. Very carefully, you will engage all the means to serve him. Why? Because you know who that person is. This is what Krishna tells in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, verse number 7. Etam vibhutim yogim cha mam yo veti tatvata. What he says, that if you understand my glories, then you will have no option left with you other than surrendering to me. You will not be left with any option. You will have to surrender to me. If we know what? If we know that this person, Krishna, is opulent. That's why he tells about his opulence in the 10th chapter. Automatically we will serve him. Just like we served Prime Minister Modi when he came to your house. We knew his opulence, no? That's why we are serving him. So, before coming to Krishna consciousness, we were not much thorough with the opulence of Krishna. Therefore, his presence or absence was not making any sense for us. And we were very neutral. But now that we are hearing about Krishna, therefore we are developing the desire to serve him. And hence, for this statement to become true, engage body, mind and self in the service of Supreme, the first actionable item that we have is hear about him. Now we have to hear about him. That's the first thing. Okay. Now after hearing, what you do? After hearing, what you do? You inquire, you follow. After hearing, you follow. Supposedly, you hear that about the traffic signal rules. On red light, you have to stop. Green light, you have to move. Now, when you go on the road, you follow this. Red light, you stop. Green light, you move. But if you just heard, but you did not follow, then what will be the result? accident. And this situation is slightly different from the situation in spirituality. If we simply hear but do not follow, still there would be results. But we have to follow also. And if we follow what we heard, then we will see results. Because this science is jnanam teham sa vijnanam. This is science as well as knowledge. This is practical science. This is a practical science. Pratyaksh avagamam dharmyam. This is pratyaksh. And the more we see it is happening, our conviction will increase. So what we hear, we have to follow. But at this point of time, I do not possess sufficient faith to follow. I do not have that much faith. Then what to do? Then what to do? If I do not have faith, then should I follow? If I do not have faith, then should I follow? Even if we do not have faith, we must follow. Because theoretically, we should understand, at least theoretically, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and Srila Prabhupada is his bona fide representative. We do not have this conviction today, okay, no problem. But theoretically, we must accept this fact that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and Srila Prabhupada is his bona fide representative. And when Srila Prabhupada is saying something, I may not be able to understand it today, but it is true. This is truth. I may or may not be able to understand this. Just like if there is a small child and that child is say 3 years old and the mother teaches him not to put hands in the electric socket. Not to put hands in the electric socket. He cannot understand this fact that the water on the hand or the skin is a good conductor of electricity. When you put the hand inside it, the electrons from inside will flow through your hands and the earthing will happen and you'll get an electric shock. He cannot understand all this physics. But he accepts the instruction given by the mother. And he doesn't wait to come to the level to understand all this physics. He follows. But as he grows, he understands this physics, okay, why we should not put hand in the electric socket. So till the time he is not developing this faith, should he not follow? He must follow. Therefore we should follow. And we should have faith on from whom we are hearing. We are not hearing from some professional. We are not hearing from some YouTuber. We are not hearing some podcast. We are hearing directly from Srila Prabhupada, who is the direct representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, we must follow. Okay. To what extent we should follow? To what extent we should follow? We should follow. To what extent? To the best of our capacity. To the best of our capacity. See, we cannot expect to do more than our capacity. We are not superhumans. We are not Superman. We are normal human beings trying to practice devotional service. If we are 5% devotee, then we will be able to do 5% in devotional service. If we are 10% devotees, then we will be able to do 10% in devotional service. We cannot expect to act like Prabhupada or his disciples. Over the time that maturity may come, but at this point of time, we will act according to our level. So to what extent we can do? According to the extent of our devotional service. That much we have to do. If we put too much of expectations from ourselves, then there would be problem. Then there would be frustrations. Then there would be problem of seeing a paralysis with our expectations. You see some memes on WhatsApp coming, expectation versus reality. You'll see some expectations. We expected this, happened this. We are 10% devotee, so our devotional service would also be only 10%. So therefore, without getting disturbed by our fantasies, we should follow the instructions given by our superiors and follow their instructions. I cannot understand that I am a 10% devotee. I am a 15% devotee. I cannot understand. I cannot estimate. But my spiritual authorities, they can understand. And because they are able to understand this fact, therefore, accordingly, they are engaging us in devotional service. Accordingly, they are engaging us in devotional service based on our level. Therefore, we should have faith on our spiritual authorities who are engaging us in devotional service. Because the point here is that a transcendentalist should always engage his body, mind and self in the service of the Supreme. But how will you engage? You don't know whether you are doing less or whether you are trying to do too much. You don't know. How much you will be able to do? As much as your spiritual authority is telling you. So this should be the basic parameter to see how we have to engage the body, mind and senses in the service of Krishna. And these three things have to be engaged intelligently. Not that we are doing some random thing and we expect it to become devotional service. Then the things will be very difficult. We may do some random things and expect that becomes devotional service. No, that will not become. Therefore, guidance should be given by a spiritual master. And in this case, no matter how intelligent we become, we would not be able to achieve the supreme goal. Just like we saw how Srila Vyasadeva showed this example. He had given all the Vedic literatures, and despite knowledge of all the Vedic literatures, he was not happy. Help was given by the spiritual master, Narad Muni. And when he followed the instructions of Narad Muni, he got satisfied. And then it says that he should live alone in a secluded place. He should live alone in a secluded place. Now this statement of living in seclusion can be very, very much misinterpreted. Living in seclusion. Living in seclusion does not mean living without the association of devotees. Living in seclusion means living away from the influence of non-devotees. Living away from the influence of non-devotees. I am not saying living away from non-devotees. My point is living away from the influence of non-devotees. Why? Because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur always wanted our centers to be right in the middle of the cities, in the urban areas, so that they can go out and preach to the new people. But our devotional service should be so strong that we should not be affected by their material desires. So that is the meaning of living in seclusion. We have to give them the association. We do not have to get influenced by the association of non-devotees. That is seclusion. If we take the literal meaning of the statement that he should live alone in seclusion, then our case will become worse than what Bharat Maharaj showed. Bharat Maharaj was still on a very highly elevated level, and living in seclusion had just an opposite result. And if he, being at such an elevated level, can show such an opposite result, what would happen to us? Where we have just started devotional service, we are just neophytes in the process of devotional service. Therefore, the scriptures should be understood from the mouth of the Acharya. And the Acharyas make sure that they explain the complete meaning and complete picture. Just like it is said about Srila Shukdev Goswami, Yaswanubhava Khila Shrutisara So this Shukdev Goswami, he has heard all the literature from Vyasadeva. And what he is presenting? Yaswanubhava Khila Shrutisara He is presenting his realization after realizing Akhila Shrutisaram. He has realized all the Vedic literature and is giving us the essence. After realizing all the Vedic literatures, he is giving us the essence. In the same way, Srila Prabhupada, in his lectures, in his books, is presenting the summary of all the Vedic literatures we have. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada, when he is explaining these principles, he gives a complete picture. The commentaries of Acharyas, the translations given by Acharyas, is not an advanced version of Google Translate. Just like there's a Google Translate, English to Hindi, English to this language, this to this language. He's not a Google Translate. He is explaining the complete meaning of the statement for our understanding. Therefore, the scriptures should be understood under the guidance of the spiritual master. They have to be taught by the spiritual master. Otherwise, the same scriptures would lead to our ruination, will destroy us. Because we do not have any authority, any adhikar to read the scriptures. If you want to understand the scriptures, guidance must be given by the spiritual master. And then it is said that carefully control his mind. So we have to control our mind. He should be free from desires and feelings of possessiveness. Now here Krishna is writing, he should be free from desires. And we hear that we cannot become desireless. We see an apparent contradiction. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada explains what is the meaning of desires. What is to be left, what is to be accepted. He explains. He should be free from desires means he should be free from material desires. But can one be free from spiritual desires? No. And how this statement will be happening? What is the practical application of this statement? One should always remember Krishna and one should never forget Krishna. One should always remember Krishna and one should never forget Krishna. What is the practical actionable item here? When we say that one should always remember Krishna, what does that mean? What does this mean? Always engage in activities which are favorable to Krishna. Always remember Krishna means not that you are playing some songs, Aaj Raat Sham Sapne Mein Aaye. Not that this way of remembering Krishna. Remembering Krishna means engaging in service of Krishna favorably. It does not mean getting sentimental. It does not mean behaving like a sahajiya. It means remembering the instructions of Krishna, practicing the instructions of Krishna, serving Krishna favorably. This means always remembering Krishna. Because when you do something, you should remember Krishna. What are the instructions of Krishna in this? Our dealings, Krishna has instructed this. So when we are dealing with others and we are practicing Trinadapi Sunichena, that means we are remembering Krishna. And then never forget Krishna. If always remembering Krishna is said, then why it is said never forget Krishna? What is the meaning of forgetting Krishna? Engaging in activities which are not favorable to Krishna, Krishna's service. So sometimes, yes, we all engage in activities which are not favorable to Krishna. And to what extent we engage in such activities? That may depend on person to person. Someone may engage in some minor amount, some would be engaging in some unfavorable activities in a major amount. But we engage in some activities which are unfavorable to Krishna. And how we are able to engage in activities which are unfavorable to Krishna? Because we have forgotten Krishna. Because for that particular time we have forgotten Krishna, therefore we are able to engage in activities which are not favorable to Krishna. So, we should always engage in activities which are favorable to Krishna and never engage in activities which are not favorable to Krishna. This way we will become free from desires. What about possessions? The more attachment we have for things, places, people, the more possessive we become. Sometimes we become too much possessive. We become possessive about whom? We become possessive about things, we become possessive about people, we become possessive about circumstances. Why? Because we have very strong attachment. Srila Prabhupada gives example that he said that once he was going in a train and he was at a Havda station, and there was an old man, very poor, and he was carrying a bundle of wood with him. Some bundle of woods with him, which were half burnt. He was carrying some woods with him and they were half burnt. And he was trying to protect those woods as if it is such a big possession he is carrying. A big wealth he is carrying. Why? Because he has attachment to that piece of wood. Other people may not be even seeing that. They won't even touch it. But because he is feeling that I am too much attached to this, therefore he is feeling fearful. He is feeling insecurity that I may not lose this wood. Similar is the case with us. We are getting so much insecure. We are getting so much puffed up for the things we possess. Once I was going in a bus to Vrindavan and there were two ladies sitting in front of me. They were not very financially strong. So one lady was telling another lady, generally ladies they speak too loudly in bus. So one lady was telling the other lady that now we have bought one RK flat, one room kitchen flat. And the other lady was saying, Acha? Now one RK flat, some of us may not be considering it to be a very big thing. But for them it was a very big thing. So they were too attached as if this is a big bungalow. People get attached to their small bastis, their small chawls, people get attached because their attachment is to that place. Similarly, people have attachment to their big mansions and palaces also. The experience of attachment is the same in all of them. However, in front of the material energy, all this has no meaning. It has no significance at all. It doesn't matter whether we possess a big mansion or we possess a small basti in a small hut. It doesn't even matter. In front of the material energy, this is insignificant and will be taken away by a simple kick. It will be taken away. But we have so much of attachments. So what is the solution? What is the solution for this? The solution is the same. We have to hear from a self-realized soul. If we have too much of attachment in us, the only thing is hear from a self-realized soul. Just like we saw in the 13th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, the example of Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra was completely attached. And even after losing the battle of Kurukshetra, he could not give up the possession of the holding of the entire regime. He could not give. And then Vidur comes and gives a very heavy instructions to Dhritarashtra. Like a dog, you are sitting here in the house, and Yudhishthira is throwing some pieces of rotis on your face, and you are eating. And very heavy instructions Vidura speaks, and by hearing those instructions, Dhritarashtra comes to senses. Similarly, Krishna speaks very strongly to Arjuna. Klebhyam masmagama partha. Why are you acting like an impotent person? To the strongest man on the battlefield, he is calling him impotent. Ashochan anashochastvam pragyavadansha bhashase. You are speaking like a very intelligent person, but you are fool number one. This is the kind of language which Krishna uses to Arjuna, because he is the spiritual master. Not that we start abusing each other. We start speaking strongly to each other. It is the adhikar of the spiritual master only. So when we hear such strong language, such direct instructions given by the self-realized authorities, then what happens? Santaha eva chindanti. These santaha, through their vani, chindanti, they cut off our attachments to this material world. They cut off the attachment, because we have developed Hriday Granthi. And this Granthi can be cut off when we hear from a self-realized soul. That is why you see that Srila Prabhupada speaks so straight. He is not giving us a sugar candy. He is not quoting the instructions just to please the audience. He is speaking very sharply, clearly, exactly. And Krishna is using that language in Bhagavad Gita. Moodha, Vimudha, Maya aparita jnanam. So he is asurim bhavam ashrita. He is using that kind of language. Why? To cut off our attachment. And when we hear from such a self-realized souls, our attachment will go down. And this way, we will be able to control our mind. Controlling our mind is not an event. Controlling the mind is not an event. That, okay, now I have controlled my mind, okay. No. It is a process. This process has to be taken over years and years and years. And that is why Krishna also acknowledges in Bhagavad Gita that controlling the mind is not an easy thing. Asanshyam mahamaho mano durnigraham satam. Controlling the mind is not an easy thing. But abhyasa yogena tato viragyena cha griyate. When you do abhyas, when you practice, then you will be able to control. Now you understand, okay, I have to do practice. I have to practice to control the mind. Now supposedly you have a geography exam and you study a lot of chemistry you practice a lot of chemistry for a geography exam. Still you will fail, because exam was something else and you practice something else. You have to practice according to the exam. Similarly, we have to practice according to the instructions given by the spiritual master. Because the instructions of the spiritual master will only help us to clear the exam of life. And what are the instructions of the spiritual master? Chant Hare Krishna, read Bhagavad Gita, serve Krishna, practice Ranadapi Sunichena Tarureva Sahishnuna, live in the association of devotees, serve Krishna very nicely. These are the instructions of the spiritual master. And when we follow these instructions very diligently, things will happen. So let us now welcome Krishna. He has had his dinner. Let's welcome him by chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. श्री श्री राधा रास बिहारी भगवान की जय। श्री श्री सीताराम लक्ष्मण भक्त हनुमान की जय। श्री श्री गौर निताई की जय। जगत गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय।